Ladies and gentlemen, Violent Games here, coming at you with my first ever Prey build. Gosh, am I excited. I think I've outdone myself here. I think I might have made the build that is going to cause me to have the most fun ever in the game. I'm worried I've peaked, honestly. That's how much I've enjoyed this build. The build I'm talking about is called the Thuggish Splicer build. It's going to be a melee psi focused build. It's very combat focused. It's a melee combat build that I'm going to make sure you guys can kill literally anything in the game with the wrench. Literally, that's what this build allows you to do. You can kill everything within Prey with a wrench, whether it's the Nightmare, the Phantoms, the Operator. Look, you could kill everything with a wrench. It is possible. I've done it, and it's called the Thuggish Splicer build. So without further ado, I'd like to jump right in. But before I start, I want to explain where the idea for this build came from, at least the theme of it anyways, Thuggish Splicer. That comes from the original Bioshock, if you guys aren't aware. It holds a lot of nostalgia to me because it was one of my favorite games of all time when it released, and the way I played the original Bioshock is I focused on the wrench. So for me, this build is very, very nostalgic of that, and the fact that it functions just so well and it makes combat feel so varied when you're focusing on, like, basically just melee, honestly. It's wonderful. I really enjoyed this build. A lot of nostalgia for me since this game is so similar to Bioshock. Starting with the Neuromod section, I'm just basically going to go into each tree and tell you what Neuromods we will be using for this build. However, I will give you a full list in the description of what order I acquired all of these Neuromods respectively throughout the trees. So, like, say I pick up one ability in Scientist tree, but then I follow up immediately afterwards with, like, a telepathic ability. I'll let you know in the description how I acquired all of these abilities throughout my campaign playing this build from start to finish. So starting in the Scientist tree, we're going to be picking up Physcian 1. This is going to be increasing the overall effectiveness of our medkits to 150%. However, the only reason we're really getting this is so we can then pick up Necropsy, recover more valuable organs from Typhon remains. These organs can range from decent loot to amazing loot, guys. And trust me, you're going to want to get this one pretty early on. It's very, very effective because Necropsy... The net result of Necropsy is so that we can craft more Neuromods, and getting this as soon as possible is a huge convenience. Next in the Scientist tree, we have Psionic Aptitude. Make sure we grab all ranks of this. This is just going to increase our overall Psi pool. And then after that, I like to grab Neurostimulant, which is going to increase the effectiveness of our Psi hypos by 100%. This is going to be awesome because we're going to be using a lot of Psi abilities with this build. Moving on to the Engineer tree, first thing I like to grab is Materials Expert. It's going to increase your recycling yield by 20%. This adds up over time, and significantly so. Do grab this as soon as you can. Don't recycle anything until you pick up this perk. It really makes a difference. After that, I like to grab Impact Calibration. Our wrench is going to be our primary weapon, and Impact Calibration is going to reduce the stamina cost of wrench attacks by 25%. I immediately like to follow up with Impact Calibration 2, because wrench attacks are going to deal 50% more damage. And then, finally, I like to grab Pulverize along the same vein of these two previous perks. And attacking with the wrench has a 25% chance to do bonus damage. This is more or less effective, but there's a modification that I'm going to reference that is going to hopefully make this even more effective. Alright, let's go into the security tree now. First thing I like to grab is Conditioning. Conditioning is going to increase our health to 115, our stamina to 105, and increase our overall movement speed by 5%. Then I like to grab Mobility 1. It's going to increase our overall movement speed by 25%. And then finally, I like to grab Mobility 2. This is going to give us the ability to sprint ludicrously fast and jump incredibly high. This really changes the way you interact with the world in Prey, and also allows us as a melee character to close the gap between our targets. This is especially effective when you're dealing with telepaths in the game, as telepaths, once you nullify their psychic abilities, will like to run away from you. When you have mobility 2, you can run them down, and even if they try to jump in a corner in the ceiling, you can usually jump up to them and even hit them with your wrench in the air. It's kind of comedic in a way, but I really enjoy this ability for that reason. Mobility 2 is probably one of my favorite abilities in the game, period. It's just that much fun. Next thing I like to grab in the security tree is Combat Focus. Now, I got this way later on in my playthrough of the game, but I almost kind of regret that because Combat Focus is really strong with a melee build. Being able to close the gap and then freeze time and then hit your enemy for more damage is kind of insane. Let me just read off the ability to you real quick. Combat Focus duration is increased to 15 seconds at the last rank, time slows around you, and you can move normally. Your attacks deal in addition 125% damage, and actions cost no stamina. And our wrench swings, guys, cost stamina, so it basically just gives you unlimited wrench swings. It's like Combat Focus is just an incredible ability. It's almost overpowered, and I'm very curious as to why it's in the human tree, but you know, logic, right? So in the energy tree, this is going to be a very simple one. We're only going to be picking up all ranks of Kinetic Blast. Kinetic Blast, in my honest opinion, after experimenting with all of the offensive Typhon abilities in the energy tree anyways, I found that Kinetic Blast hits every enemy in the game. No enemies are really immune to it. It does great damage. It synergizes with our melee build because what you can do is you can knock them down with Kinetic Blast and then pulverize them into the earth. And it's wonderful. Kinetic Blast is just overall a really good power and doesn't have as bad of a Neuromod investment as some of the other trees given their bonuses. We won't be needing Lift Field in the Kinetic Blast tree line, or vein as I like to call it, simply due to the fact Kinetic Blast is good enough and does what we need it to do. Moving into the Morph tree, I like to pick up Mimic Matter 1. This is going to allow us to get into a lot of areas we otherwise shouldn't. It's a very useful utility and costs very few Neuromods. The ulterior motive of picking up Mimic Matter 1 is so that we can get to Regeneration 1 and 2. We're going to be able to regenerate up to 25 health immediately after taking damage. This may not sound like a lot or useful at all, however, you can negate all minor damage in the game. One thing that happens frequently when you're a melee character is you'll be attacking a certain phantom with an AoE passive damage once you get too close to them, whether it's fire or ether. I think in some instances electricity can be a problem, but we'll deal with that in a second. But regeneration, when you take minor damage from these enemies, is immediately negated, saving you a lot of health in the long run. Regeneration 2 is a fantastic ability and should not be overlooked. Alright, from our final tree, Telepathy, I like to pick up Backlash 1, 2, and 3. This is going to create a shield around us for 20 seconds, preventing the next 3 enemy attack from doing any damage to us. Additionally, it's going to knock back said enemy if they happen to land an attack, and funny enough, it seems that if an enemy attacks you at range with a telepathic attack, it can still knock them down with Backlash. That's a very interesting and fun mechanic. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it really adds value to Backlash because you can just follow up by running over there and beating them to death with your wrench and them not being able to ever get up. It's quite humorous. And it's also going to be one of those abilities that allows us to fight the Nightmare. You can't really fight the Nightmare as a melee build because one melee strike from the Nightmare and it's pretty much game over. Having Backlash allows you to take 3 hits from the Nightmare and can even stun the Nightmare for a period of time when he gets backlashed. After that, I like to grab Psychoshock, also a very important ability and is going to allow us to fight the Nightmare. You can execute a direct psychic attack of biological targets up to 90 damage at its last rank, and nullify psi abilities for 20 seconds. The 90 damage is nice, but we really do this for the psi ability nullification. This basically allows us to win any 1v1 in the game. The way you accomplish this is by first casting Psychoshock to nullify your enemy of psychic abilities, and then you follow up by casting Backlash on yourself. When you nullify an enemy's psychic abilities, it only resorts them to either melee or fleeing. From that point, you cast Backlash on yourself to negate any melee damage that they may do to you. Unless you know the target will run away, of course. But once you cast Backlash to negate any physical damage they can do to you, even if they manage to get a swing in, they're still going to get knocked back. Additionally, they might not even get a swing in before you knock them down with your wrench. And then from then, even if you get flanked by a mimic, you're still going to be able to not get hit by them because of the amount of stacks of Backlash you've accumulated. Backlash and Psychoshock in conjunction with each other makes melee incredibly powerful, especially if you even follow that up with one of your other psychic abilities or even combat focus. It's just really, really ridiculous and fun. So now that I've covered every Neuromod you guys are going to be needing, let's move into chipsets, shall we? Let's start with our suit chipsets. First thing I like to grab is Impact Amp S390. Wrench swings have a greater chance to knock back an opponent, that's what it says anyhow. And my god, you guys, it's like broken. It's so broken and wonderful, and it brings joy into my soul. I really love this chipset. It absolutely just makes your wrench a ridiculous weapon. You can literally pulverize phantoms just repetitively with this, and they can just keep getting knocked down over and over and over again and never get a chance to retaliate. It's hilarious. It makes this build so much fun. I recommend it any day of the week and twice on Sundays. So the next thing I like to grab is Kinesthetic Assister. Our stamina recharge rate is going to be dramatically increased by this. It's really, really powerful, especially because we're going to be using a lot of stamina for our build. And it's so powerful that we don't need to add on any additional stamina to make this build effective. If you have Kinesthetic Assister, you are going to have basically unlimited stamina, or at least enough stamina to literally just keep swinging your wrench ad nauseum until things die. It's just wonderful. Oh my gosh, it works so good with the Impact S390. It's just such... You don't need any other chipsets, guys. I'm telling you, this is the best. Literally, so much fun has been had because of these two chipsets alone. I didn't even see the need to add additional chipsets to this build. So as for our Psychoscope chipsets, I like to grab Wrench Critical, just to increase the critical chance rate when using our wrench, maximizing our DPS with the wrench. After that, I like to grab a Psychoactive Charger. This is going to help us regen some Psy over time, effectively helping us save some Psy hypos for when we need them. It's really, really convenient to have. Get it as soon as you can. So now that we've gone into all of the RPG goodness, let's go into our final verdict for the Thuggish Splicer build. This is just a segment where I go over how much fun I had playing the build from the start of the game to the end of the game. So overall, guys, this is the most fun you're going to have with a melee build. I'm telling you right now, you can just run in there, pulverize everything with your wrench, but also have a variation of Psi abilities that make you feel really powerful, and you kind of have to plan out certain engagements over others, and you also have more options and flexibility. This build has it all for a melee character, and even the beginning of the game can be really fun if you get the right chipsets early on. And endgame is even satisfying because around mid-game, you're actually going to achieve everything I've set out for you in this build if you've followed the ordered list in the description. But after that happens, you can actually take the build in several directions, adding more nuance to your gameplay. So you could go into utilities like, oh, my health kits are more effective, I have more health. I did that, by the way, and oh my god, that build with tank health, oh, it's insane. You will not die. Literally, you will not die from then on out. But you can also take a more hack approach and get into more areas in the game and backtrack if you necessarily want to. There's just a lot of places you can take the Thuggish Splicer build because of how viable the base is. I was very impressed with Prey's mechanics as far as being able to play your way and it be effective. I'd never found that I really needed hack or anything to have fun with the game, so I'm very glad that that was something that I got to do. This build was so much fun. There was definitely defining moments in the build that really make it feel better. The progression is really, really solid. Like, once you get to certain abilities, like I just said, the build just opens up. Like, when you hit Agility 2, guys, in the suggested list, it's going to change the entire way you play the game. And the build's going to feel way more aggressive and way more effective. It's just, there's so much good things to say about it, guys. I don't want to go on too long, so I'm going to leave you with, yes, this build is fun from start to finish. I honestly don't think there's going to be a better melee build out there anywhere that isn't going to resemble this somehow. The abilities just synergize way too well. So this is Violent Games signing off. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys. It was really, really fun to produce. Let me know your thoughts. As always, pissing off.